Mercenary of History, Present and Future. Overview: The evolution of mercenaries. Mercenaries have played a complex role in warfare throughout history, defined as individuals who engage in armed conflict for personal profit rather than for national allegiance. Their presence dates back to ancient times, where they were often employed by city-states and empires to bolster military strength. This report explores the historical context of mercenaries, their current status, and implications for the future of warfare. Historical context. 1. Ancient and medieval periods. The concept of mercenaries can be traced to the ancient Greek 10,000, a group of mercenaries who fought for Cyrus the Younger in 401 BCE. During the Middle Ages, figures such as the Italian condottieri emerged, providing military services to city-states across Italy in exchange for financial remuneration. 2. The 30 Years' War 1618 to 1648. This conflict marked a significant turning point as large numbers of mercenaries were utilized, leading to widespread devastation in Europe. The war's brutality led to the establishment of standing armies, reducing reliance on mercenaries. 3. 19th century resurgence. Mercenaries reappeared in conflicts across Africa and South America, often linked to colonial interests and power struggles. Their roles became more structured with the rise of private military companies, PMCs. 4. Post-Cold War era. The end of the Cold War saw a significant increase in the privatization of military services. The U.S. military's reliance on PMCs during the Iraq and Afghanistan wars exemplified this trend, evidenced by the infamous actions of companies like Blackwater. Current landscape of mercenaries. 1. Modern mercenary firms. Companies such as the Wagner Group and Academy, formerly Blackwater, operate globally, often in conflict zones like Syria and Ukraine. These firms are akin to multinational corporations, driven by profitability rather than national loyalty. 2. Legal and ethical implications. The legal status of mercenaries remains contentious. According to the Geneva Conventions, mercenaries do not have the same protections as regular combatants and can be prosecuted under international law. However, many countries have not ratified treaties explicitly prohibiting mercenary activities. 3. Globalization of mercenary services. The market for mercenary services has become increasingly globalized, with fighters recruited from various countries, including former soldiers from conflict zones. This trend raises concerns about accountability and oversight. Key issues and challenges. 1. Marketization of warfare. The commodification of military services has led to a situation where conflicts can be pursued for profit, raising moral questions about the nature of modern warfare and the implications for global security. 2. Non-state actors. The rise of non-state armed groups has changed the dynamics of warfare. Mercenaries can be hired by various entities, including corporations, governments, and insurgent groups, complicating traditional notions of state sovereignty and control over violence. 3. Regulation and accountability. There is an urgent need for effective regulation of PMCs and mercenary activities. Current international laws are inadequate to manage the complexities of modern conflicts involving private military forces. Future projections. 1. Increased use of PMCs. As states face budgetary constraints and public reluctance to commit troops to foreign conflicts, the use of PMCs is likely to increase. This could lead to a normalization of mercenary forces in international relations. 2. Technological advancements. The future may see the rise of cyber mercenaries, as warfare increasingly transcends traditional battlefields into the digital realm. This evolution presents new challenges for regulation and control. 3. Shifting power dynamics. The growing influence of wealthy individuals and corporations in military affairs could lead to a new order of warfare, where power is determined not just by states but also by those who can afford private armies. Conclusion. The role of mercenaries in warfare has transformed but remains a critical aspect of modern conflict. As global politics evolve and the lines between state and non-state actors blur, the implications of mercenary forces will continue to shape the landscape of international relations and security. The challenge lies in effectively managing and regulating this trend to prevent further erosion of state sovereignty and the ethical dilemmas associated with privatized violence. Understanding this complex issue is essential for policymakers, military strategists, and society at large as we navigate the future of warfare. The discussion surrounding mercenaries, private individuals who engage in armed conflict for personal profit, reveals several counterintuitive insights regarding their historical and contemporary roles in warfare. Historical context. 1. Historical norm versus modern stigma. Historically, mercenaries were commonplace and often celebrated figures in warfare. In ancient and medieval societies, they were seen as skilled professionals rather than the stigmatized figures they are today. The term mercenary has evolved to carry a negative connotation, contrasting with the romanticized view of historical figures like the condottieri in Italy, who fought for city-states and were often viewed as national heroes. 2. Profit motive and loyalty. The assumption is that mercenaries lack loyalty compared to national soldiers. However, historical examples show that many mercenaries demonstrated significant loyalty to their paymasters, sometimes for decades. For instance, Sir John Hawkwood, an English mercenary captain, served Florence for over 20 years, gaining respect and honor in his role. This contradicts the notion that mercenary forces are inherently disloyal or unreliable. Contemporary dynamics. 3. Modern militaries versus mercenaries. Many modern military strategies assume a clear distinction between state armies and mercenaries, with the latter viewed as inferior or less effective. However, the reality is that contemporary mercenaries like those in the Wagner Group can operate at levels of competency that rival traditional military forces. The notion that they are merely a cheaper alternative is misleading. They often possess unique skills, advanced training, and operational flexibility that can surpass those of conventional forces. For legal ambiguities, the legal status of mercenaries is often painted as clear-cut, with international laws like the Geneva Conventions categorically denying them combatant status. Yet in practice, the definitions are murky, leading to situations where mercenaries can operate with impunity, especially in conflicts where state accountability is weak. This challenges the assumption that legal frameworks effectively regulate or limit mercenary actions in warfare. 5. Market forces in warfare. The rise of private military companies, PMCs, has created a market for force where military services are commoditized. This model runs counter to the traditional view that war is solely a national endeavor. Instead, the privatization of military services illustrates how financial motivations can drive conflict and warfare, leading to scenarios where corporations and wealthy individuals can influence or instigate military actions for profit, overshadowing the roles of nation-states. 6. Ethical quandaries. The ethical implications of hiring mercenaries suggest a dichotomy between state-sponsored military actions and private military operations. While states often justify military interventions on moral grounds, the use of mercenaries raises questions about accountability and the ethics of warfare. If mercenaries can be employed to conduct operations that states may be unwilling to carry out themselves, it creates a moral hazard where the consequences of military actions are obscured and potentially ignored. Future implications. 7. Evolving nature of conflict. As global conflicts become increasingly complex, the notion that only state actors can engage in warfare is becoming outdated. Non-state actors, including mercenaries, play a significant role in contemporary conflicts, often shaping outcomes in ways traditional military strategies cannot account for. This suggests a need for new frameworks in international relations and military strategy that acknowledge the influence of mercenaries. 8. Privatization of military power. The rise of mercenaries may lead to a future where military power is concentrated in the hands of corporations and wealthy individuals rather than states, fundamentally altering the nature of international relations. This could result in conflicts driven by corporate interests rather than national agendas, leading to a fragmented global security landscape. Conclusion: the nuanced understanding of mercenaries challenges popular perceptions and assumptions about their roles in warfare. Rather than being mere footnotes in military history, they are integral to both historical and contemporary conflict dynamics, revealing the complex interplay between economics, ethics, and military strategy. As the landscape of warfare continues to evolve, the implications of mercenary activities will likely become increasingly significant, necessitating a re-evaluation of traditional military paradigms. In examining the report on the theme Mercenary of History, Present and Future, several critical insights may be overlooked by the general public, primarily due to the complex nature of the subject matter and the implications it carries for modern warfare, international relations, and global security. Overlooked insights. 1. Legal ambiguity and protections. A significant point often missed is the ambiguous legal status of mercenaries under international law. According to the 1977 Additional Protocol I to the Geneva Conventions, mercenaries are not entitled to combatant or prisoner of war status. This lack of legal protection raises ethical questions about their use in conflicts and the potential for human rights violations. The implications of this are profound, as it creates a loophole that allows states and corporations to engage in military operations without accountability, ultimately undermining the rule of law in armed conflicts. 2. Changing nature of warfare. The transition from state-controlled armies to privatized military operations marks a paradigm shift in warfare. The report highlights how modern mercenary groups such as the Wagner Group function more like multinational corporations than traditional military units. This evolution challenges existing military strategies and raises questions about the efficacy of conventional military responses to privately contracted forces. It is crucial for military strategists and policymakers to recognize that traditional approaches may not apply and that a new framework for conflict resolution and military engagement is needed. 3. Profit motive as a driving force. The report emphasizes that mercenaries are primarily driven by profit rather than political ideology or national loyalty. This commodification of violence can lead to conflicts being prolonged for financial gain, creating cycles of violence that benefit mercenary companies at the expense of local populations and national stability. The potential for mercenaries to exacerbate conflicts for profit is a critical concern that demands attention from international regulatory bodies and governments. 4. Impact on sovereignty and power dynamics. The resurgence of mercenaries poses a threat to the traditional notions of state sovereignty and power dynamics. As wealthy corporations and individuals can now hire military services, the balance of power may shift away from nation-states to private entities, leading to a scenario where conflicts are waged without the consent or oversight of governments. This scenario raises existential questions about the future of international relations and the nature of warfare, potentially leading to a world where conflicts are fought by hired hands rather than state forces. 5. Historical context and recurrence. The historical context of mercenaries is rich but often overlooked. The report traces the use of mercenaries back to ancient times, noting that they have been a consistent feature of warfare throughout history. Understanding this historical precedent is key to recognizing that the current rise of mercenaries is not a new phenomenon but rather a re-emergence of past practices in a modern context. This historical lens can inform current discussions about regulation and the ethical implications of using mercenaries today. 6. Globalization of mercenary services. The report discusses the globalization of the mercenary market, which allows for the recruitment and deployment of fighters from diverse national backgrounds. This globalization complicates the regulatory framework, as it involves multiple jurisdictions and legal systems. The blending of nationalities within mercenary ranks can lead to challenges in accountability and oversight, making it difficult to trace responsibility for actions taken on the battlefield. 7. Ethical dilemmas for international organizations. the increasing reliance on mercenaries by states and NGOs raises ethical dilemmas regarding accountability and the ethical considerations of hiring private military contractors for humanitarian missions. The report suggests that NGOs are increasingly using private military firms for security, which can lead to a conflict of interest and undermine the humanitarian principles they stand for. This trend necessitates a re-evaluation of how humanitarian organizations operate in conflict zones and the potential consequences of outsourcing security to mercenaries. 8. Future of warfare and the role of technology. The report hints at the future intersection of mercenary activities with advancements in technology, including cyber warfare. The emergence of cyber mercenaries who conduct cyber attacks for hire represents a new frontier in privatized warfare. As conflicts evolve to include cyber dimensions, the traditional understanding of mercenaries and their roles will need to adapt, leading to further complexities in regulating private military actions in both physical and digital realms. Significance of these insights. The significance of these overlooked insights is multidimensional. Policy implications. Understanding the evolving nature of mercenaries and their legal status can inform policymakers in drafting legislation that addresses the complexities of privatized military operations and holds parties accountable for their actions in conflict zones. Strategic military planning. Military strategists must adapt to the realities of modern warfare where private contractors play significant roles. This adaptation can enhance strategic planning and operational effectiveness against non-traditional adversaries. International security. The global implications of a privatized military market can destabilize regions and alter power dynamics, with potential consequences for international security and cooperation among states. Recognizing this trend is vital for fostering a more stable international order. Ethical standards. The ethical dilemmas presented by the use of mercenaries in humanitarian contexts necessitate a re-evaluation of ethical standards for NGOs and other organizations operating in conflict zones. Addressing these dilemmas is critical for maintaining the integrity of humanitarian missions. By focusing on these often overlooked aspects, the discourse surrounding mercenaries can be broadened, leading to a more nuanced understanding of their historical role and contemporary implications. This understanding is paramount for navigating the future landscape of warfare, international relations, and global security challenges. 1. Historical evolution of mercenaries. The concept of mercenaries has deep historical roots dating back to ancient civilizations such as the Greek mercenaries in the Persian Empire and the Roman use of foreign soldiers. Over time, the role of mercenaries evolved, particularly during the Middle Ages with the rise of the condottieri in Italy. Their significance diminished after the Peace of Westphalia in 1648, which marked the shift to state-controlled armies. Understanding this historical trajectory is crucial for analyzing the contemporary resurgence of mercenaries, as it highlights the cyclical nature of private military forces in response to political, economic, and social changes. 2. Legal and ethical implications. The legal status of mercenaries remains contentious, particularly under international humanitarian law, which generally denies them the rights afforded to regular combatants. The 1977 Additional Protocol I to the Geneva Conventions explicitly defines a mercenary and excludes them from combatant status. The lack of a robust international legal framework regulating mercenary activities raises significant ethical concerns, especially regarding accountability for war crimes and human rights violations. These challenges complicate the landscape of modern warfare, where mercenaries operate with varying degrees of oversight and legal protection. 3. Market dynamics and globalization of private military companies (PMCs). The emergence of PMCs such as Blackwater and the Wagner Group reflects the marketization of military force, where profit motives drive the engagement of private military services. This shift is facilitated by globalization, allowing for the recruitment of personnel from various nationalities, often in conflict zones where state militaries are ineffective. The dynamics of supply and demand in this market not only influenced the nature of contemporary warfare but also blurred the lines between state and non-state actors, complicating international relations and security paradigms. For what future implications for warfare and international relations, the increasing reliance on mercenaries and PMCs poses significant implications for future conflicts. As states privatize military operations, the potential for wars without states emerges, where wealthy corporations or individuals can wield military power independently of national governments. This trend threatens to undermine the traditional state monopoly on violence, leading to a fragmented security landscape where accountability is diminished and conflicts may proliferate due to the lower barriers to entry for warfare. Addressing these challenges will require a re-evaluation of international norms surrounding the use of force and the role of mercenaries in global security strategies. 1. The 10,401 to 399 BCE, this famous group of Greek mercenaries led by Xenophon was hired by Cyrus the Younger to help him seize the Persian throne from his brother Artaxerxes II. After Cyrus was killed in the Battle of Cunaxa, the 10,000 found themselves stranded deep in enemy territory. They undertook a remarkable journey back to Greece, which Xenophon chronicled in his work Anabasis, detailing their strategic retreats and engagements against various adversaries along the way. 2. The condottieri 14th to 16th century. In Renaissance Italy, condottieri were mercenary captains who led bands of soldiers for hire. City-states like Florence and Venice relied on these mercenaries to wage wars against one another. The condottieri operated similarly to modern private military contractors, often switching sides based on the best financial incentives. Notable figures like Francesco Sforza eventually gained power, becoming the Duke of Milan through their military exploits. 3. The French Foreign Legion 1831–present. Established in 1831, the French Foreign Legion is a military service branch of the French army that allows foreign nationals to enlist. It was originally formed to support France's colonial ambitions but has evolved into an elite unit known for its rigorous training and discipline. Members of the Legion serve under a unique code of anonymity and are often involved in high-risk operations worldwide, embodying the complex role of modern mercenaries while functioning under national military command. Future outlook: the evolution of mercenaries in global conflict. The role of mercenaries in armed conflict has evolved significantly over the centuries, and their future is poised for further transformation driven by geopolitical, economic, and technological changes. As we look toward the coming decades, several key trends and predictions can be identified regarding the future of mercenaries and private military companies (PMCs). 1. Increased demand for private military services. As state militaries face budget constraints and political challenges, more nations and non-state actors are likely to turn to mercenaries and PMCs to fulfill their military needs. This trend has been particularly evident in conflict regions like the Middle East, Africa, and parts of Eastern Europe, where local governments often lack the resources or political will to address security challenges effectively. The privatization of military functions will enable states to engage in military actions without the political ramifications that come with deploying national forces. For instance, countries like the United Arab Emirates (UAE) have already utilized foreign mercenaries to engage in conflicts in Yemen and Libya, indicating a growing reliance on private forces to conduct military operations. As conflicts continue to arise globally, the market for mercenaries will expand, providing a lucrative opportunity for private military firms. 2. Legitimization and regulation of PMCs. While the use of mercenaries has often been stigmatized, there is a potential for the legitimization of PMCs as they become increasingly integrated into national security strategies. As states grapple with the complexities of modern warfare, there may be a push for clearer regulations governing the use of PMCs, including accountability measures for human rights abuses. International bodies and states might seek to establish frameworks that regulate PMC operations, including adherence to international humanitarian law. This could lead to the creation of a certification process for PMCs ensuring that they meet certain ethical and operational standards. Countries may also begin to recognize and regulate the actions of their citizens working as mercenaries abroad, further institutionalizing the industry. 3. Technological advancements and cyber mercenaries. The integration of technology into warfare is transforming military operations, and this trend will extend to mercenary activities. The rise of cyber warfare has already led to the emergence of cyber mercenaries who offer their skills in hacking and digital espionage for hire. As nation-states increasingly rely on cyber capabilities, the demand for skilled cyber mercenaries will likely grow. Furthermore, advancements in artificial intelligence (AI) and automated systems may lead to the development of new types of mercenary services. For instance, companies might begin to offer drone operations or cyber defense strategies as part of their portfolio, creating a hybrid model of military service that blends traditional and modern warfare tactics. 4. Geopolitical changes and proxy wars. As global power dynamics shift, particularly with the rise of non-Western powers such as China and Russia, the nature of conflict is likely to change. Proxy wars, where states support opposing factions in a conflict without direct involvement, will become more common. Mercenaries may play a crucial role in these proxy conflicts, providing deniability for state sponsors and allowing them to influence outcomes without committing their own troops. For example, the involvement of Russian mercenaries in Ukraine and Syria highlights how states can leverage private forces to achieve strategic objectives while minimizing political fallout. As geopolitical tensions escalate, so too will the use of mercenaries in these complex, multifaceted conflicts. 5. Ethics and accountability challenges. The rise of mercenaries poses significant ethical and accountability challenges. As the use of PMCs becomes more prevalent, issues regarding their conduct in armed conflict will come under increased scrutiny. Historical incidents such as the Nisour Square shooting involving Blackwater contractors have raised questions about the accountability of private military personnel. Expectations for transparency and accountability will likely grow, leading to calls for comprehensive oversight mechanisms. This could involve international treaties or national laws that hold mercenaries accountable for war crimes and human rights violations. However, enforcing such regulations will be challenging, particularly in conflict zones where local governance is weak. 6. Corporate interests and militarization of business. The intertwining of corporate interests and military activities is expected to deepen in the coming years. Multinational corporations, particularly those in resource extraction industries, may increasingly rely on PMCs to secure their operations and protect their assets in unstable regions. This trend could lead to the militarization of business, where companies engage in armed conflict to protect their interests, further blurring the lines between military and corporate objectives. As corporations seek to safeguard their investments, they may employ mercenaries to handle security situations that would traditionally fall under state responsibility. This shift could lead to an environment where private interests dictate military actions, raising concerns about accountability and the ethical implications of profit-driven warfare. Conclusion: the future of mercenaries and PMCs is likely to be characterized by increased demand, legitimization efforts, technological integration, and complex geopolitical dynamics. As they become more embedded in the fabric of modern warfare, the ethical and accountability challenges they present will need to be addressed through robust regulatory frameworks. The evolution of mercenary forces will not only reshape the nature of warfare but also have profound implications for international relations and global security. As stakeholders navigate this changing landscape, the interplay between private military actors and state interests will be a critical area for observation and analysis.